Understanding of the conception of cultural policy, and another one which would be maybe a sort of eatable version for the replacement of the cultural policy concept, which I would call creative industries. So the whole story would be framed in a very special aim of policy goal, how to do the creative industry. Practically, that sort of presentation, that sort of approach has two meanings, or two goals, or two aims. Aim number one, trying to understand that how should you do culture sustainable? Sustainable in the sense, I don't know, are you familiar with the concept of the sustainability in the ecological industry? It means sustainability means that in a complex way the growth is autonomous and without any permanent intervention it's functioning. So my aim is to show how to do culture a sort of sustainable system without strong and permanent interventions, how you're building up a flourishing cultural life somewhere. So this is the first aim to show it. And the second piece what I want to show here, or second aspect, how the concept of the new global cities, the new major cities, the new metropolitan cities is connected to a special sort of culture. The second aspect is important for me from that perspective. Then we have a third aspect too. The second aspect is important for me in that perspective, that in the modern series of information societies, in the modern series of knowledge societies, the importance of the place is not there. So the modern knowledge society is speaking about that space is not important in the modern knowledge society anymore. You can be seated at any city, you can be seated at any village. If you have internet connections, if you have modern computer technologies, you are part of the global village, and then you function as part of the system. I'm not speaking here against the importance of the modern information technologies, but here I want to say here in this presentation and in this talk in the morning how important is the city, and how important is the city now in the knowledge society, and it means how the city is becoming again important as a special place for cultural production. And via that specific cultural production, and via that participation of creative intellectuals in that process, the city is becoming again important. So this is the second central idea which I want to show in this presentation in the morning, how it's working, how it's operating. And I have a third ambition here, to show that culture is an economic factor. Culture is not a passive consumption piece, not a passive element of consumption, but it's an active element of creating goods in a modern major international city. So it's not just the guests in the hotels during cultural festivals, which is also an important piece of the story, but culture is becoming important as a factor for the creative industries, and I will speak a little bit about the creative industries as such. So practically, for that, I'm trying from the international literature, of course, to introduce a whole list of special concepts. I'm speaking here about cultural sustainability. In Russian it would be устойчивое развитие культуры. I will speak here, during the lecture about cultural markets. Rünki Kultur. I will speak about cultural goods, like public goods or private goods, so culture as a svojeobrazne dobro in Russian. I will speak about the interconnection or interconnectedness between social integration, social stratification, and cultural integration, cultural stratification. And I try to show, even in a short way, that cultural stratification, I will show two pieces, two cases. In first, cultural stratification and social stratification are, in a serious way bonded, integrated, and I will show cases when cultural stratification and cultural integration are different than social integration. It's quite interesting, by the way, how intellectuals and how intelligentsia behaves, respect to the stratification integration issue in the periods of economic crisis, economic and political crisis. It's quite interesting that even we have an internal stratification inside of the intelligentsia, and so different strata of the intelligentsia react to the crisis in different ways and manners. Just a small example, to be concrete, because I think it's useful. In the 90s, I don't know how was that in Tbilisi, in Georgia, but in Russia, in Moscow and St. Petersburg, when the crisis came and the economy was destroyed and people had a permanent shortage of almost everything, you had a very strange reinterpretation of the importance of the university as a place where you can study. So it comes up that to be an intellectual, to be a professional in most societies, including in a very specific way the old Soviet societies, had a specific value. So it was nice to study, not only because knowledge is nice, but you were somehow incorporated into the social elite via that training. So you became, maybe not, you had, mass, intellectual professions became mass professions, but so, to be an engineer, to be a doctor, to be a teacher, it was not a high rank social prestige anymore, but still it was better than to be a worker. From the perspective of the prestige, plus knowledge, plus etc., etc. And we see everywhere, but I'm speaking about Moscow, St. Petersburg, but we could observe it in Prague or in Budapest as well, that in the new situation when university degrees, I'm speaking about the early 90s, were not important anymore, because they were not giving either money or prestige. Just the opposite. People were looking for practical professions. People were looking for something which can offer them enough money for food and transportation and heating. And intellectual professions were not at that time. So practically, we see an interesting restratification of the things in two aspects. I'm speaking about the 90s. That smart young men are not going to the university. University education remains a part for women. Girls can go to study, men must earn money. Or men must do something to find a profession which gives them the chance to feed their families or feed their lover or anybody. So girls could study. The reaction of the family was that, you can do that. So we can come back to that because it's an interesting point of the cultural stratification, but I want to underline here social cultural stratification from another point of view. You know that, in the sociology of intellectuals, the sociology of intelligentsia, you have not very deep but existing division when people are speaking